Well, hello there, and welcome to the IRE vlog. This is Ron. I'll be your vlog master today. I had a request to do a vlog about one of the elements in the self-directed learning model. And that element is called documenting your learning. It's at the center of the cycle in the model. And it actually ends up pointing to all of the different parts of the model of self-directed learning. There's an old saying, I heard it in the Navy, and I'm sure that it goes well beyond that. It's called, if it wasn't documented, it didn't happen. There's the saying. If it wasn't documented, it didn't happen. So when I define learning, there are lots of different good definitions for learning. But one aspect of learning that I think is really important is that whatever it is that was learned is available to me, the individual, long after the activity when I learned it. If my learning is going to be valuable, it's going to be accessible by me later. Now, some things you learn and they're always with you. You don't have to have any sort of documentation. Learning how to put one foot in front of the other if you want to walk, learning how to ski. You don't have to, if you're learning how to downhill ski, you probably don't need to have it documented that you now know how to downhill ski and what all the different parts of it are. But what I find when learning academic material, research, writings, so on, most of the time when I learn something and learn it in, maybe I go to a workshop. A workshop would be a great example. I go to a workshop and I learn something new. That new thing I learned that was highly valuable doesn't stick with me like knowing how to ride my bike or how to downhill ski. In fact, I learned some very valuable things that if I don't document them, I shortly thereafter forgot that I ever learned it, certainly forgot what I learned, and that learning is no longer useful to me. This would be true if I were taking any of our competencies at IRE. If I'm learning something new for how to teach, basically any kind of learning where it's complex material, it's new material, if I don't document it well, I very quickly lose track of it. So if you take competencies from me, you'll notice one of the things that I place a high value on is you having a binder where you keep in an organized fashion all of the notes that you've taken, all of the problems you've done, all of the reflections that were done, all of the describes that were done. That's an example of documenting learning. So, getting a little closer to the point here, if I were going to learn something new today, and I did, how would I go about documenting it? Well, I use journals. You've seen me carry them around. Just at within my reach here at the kitchen table, I have the last 4 journals that I've used. I fill them up. I get my wife to make me some cool covers so that when I want to find something, I can associate it. My memory is usually good enough to know which of these covers, and I have downstairs I have a whole bookshelf, got about 20 of these, and the cover usually has some sort of mental image that gets me to the right place when I want to find something. So when I use one of these journals, there are a couple of things that I do. Now this is really not much different than when I was in college and I would go to class and take notes in a class. What is different though is in the self-directed learning model, um, it's not just enough to take the notes. That does get you some sense of learning, but what I find is that it takes more than that. So I do these things when learning something new. I do a lot of my learning by reading things, usually by reading books or articles that people have written. And the first step number one, when I'm going to learn something, is I open up my journal and I write down a sentence, two at the most, that describes what my goal is. So today, when I sit down, I'm going to spend 45 minutes reading this article. I start by setting a goal. What do I want to get out of this? Now, the the value in doing that is it kind of prepares your mind, opens up yourself for doing the learning. It, by actually writing it out, that process in and of itself, which might seem kind of, well, of course, I sat down and I wanted to learn stress strain diagrams. It seems kind of obvious, but the act of doing it is where you get some value. It prepares you for the learning you're about to do. So I start out with a goal statement. Then I go through and I take notes, and I bet we all do this very similarly to one another. When we're learning something, we take notes. The, that's the kind of the essential part. Now, midway through, I purposefully, if I know that I'm going to spend 45 minutes, I'll set a little buzzer, and midway through, I will do a sentence of recapping to see, am I where I wanted to be? Am I on the right track? Am I achieving my goals? Or am I on the wrong track? In the self-directed learning model, we call this monitoring. I do it purposefully because sometimes I'll get through 45 minutes and realize that I got off track early, or that I spent 45 minutes doing something that I really that was of no value to me. So I put that monitoring in there. And when I do that monitoring, I'll write another sentence, basically describing, am I on track with what I want to do? Okay, so take notes. Now, when I get done taking the notes, I don't stop there. There are two more things that I do. One is I create some sort of drawing that captures those notes that I just took. Some sort of flowchart, concept map, visual sketch. It's kind of like a review of what I just learned, but putting it into another form for my brain to work from. If I have 5 pages of notes, my brain can't process all of that at a glance. But by creating a visual, a graphical, some sort of picture that summarizes and puts together the different pieces of things that I was just learning, that is a very, in my mind, in my learning, a very important step. And then at the end, I do this, it's on the self-directed learning model, it's called Regulating for the Future. I write a quick summary statement of how satisfied am I with my progress. Did I meet that goal that I started out with, yes or no? What might I do differently in the future? What did today's learning do? Did it bring me to an end point? Did it open up some new beginning points? I read a summary statement and give myself some ideas on the next time I have to do something like this, which for me is typically tomorrow, what I'm going to do differently to be better as a learner. That process right there is metacognition. So there it is. The question was, how do I document learning? We can all do this differently. I'm not expecting that you do what I do, but I'm putting it out there as a template, something that you can build your own model off of. I do think that there are some important parts of those things that I do. That initial goal statement, that midterm monitoring, that creation of a graphical model at the end, and then the metacognition, the regulation for the future. All right, you have a good day.